will be quite enlightening. And first, we will be discussing the basics of gas exchange. This will be involving a bit of physics, your knowledge of physics, if you have some. So, what are the basics of gas exchange, or how do the gases get themselves diffuse into and out of the cells? So gas exchange between the alveolar air and the blood in the pulmonary capillaries result in increased oxygen concentration and decreased carbon dioxide in the blood leaving the lungs. So what does it mean? What actually we are going to discuss today? What is our sole purpose? So for example, if this is the alveoli, here is the interstitium, and this is the blood vessel. Here you can see. This is blood vessel. Can we write it? So this is blood vessel. Here is the interstitium, and here is the alveoli. So the air from the environment comes here. So air that comes from the environment to the alveoli, the direction would be this. This air, you will see the composition of that as well a few moments later. So this air diffuses here, the gas, oxygen diffuses. The oxygen diffuses into the interstitium and then into blood. Meanwhile, here the carbon dioxide here actually is transported from this point to this point. So what actually it is, once the air is entering in the alveoli, the quantity of oxygen increases in alveolar air and it diffuses due to its increased quantity, because increased quantity means the number of molecules are greater for oxygen, and it means that there is a lot of oxygen now in alveolar air. So once the oxygen is in greater quantity, so oxygen diffuses into interstitium and pulmonary capillary. It increases, while carbon dioxide decreases by diffusing out. So simply, this blood enters the systemic arteries where the blood goes. Gas measurements are taken to assess the effectiveness of lung function. So obviously, the blood that is basically moving from pulmonary capillary into heart, then from there this blood goes, then this blood goes to whole of the body. So what is the partial pressure of the gases? So the pressure is caused by multiple impacts of moving molecules against a surface. So therefore the pressure of a gas acting on the surfaces of the respiratory passages and alveoli is proportional to the summated forces of impact of all the molecules of that gas striking the surface at any given instant. So what is meant by this? here there is a simple rule of physics. And what is that? For example, if this is a gas and it has certain number of molecules in a container, so these molecules are in a random movement and they are moving and striking to each other, and ultimately they get impacts. So simply this is an alveoli, and so as the alveolar air has nitrogen, alveolar air has oxygen, alveolar air has carbon dioxide and some other noble gases. So the greater the quantity of one gas in that mixture of air means that it has a greater partial pressure. So it means that the pressure is directly proportional to the concentration of the gas molecule. So what is that similar container? For example, if you have these 5 molecules of, here you can see 5 molecules of oxygen and 5 molecules of, or rather 7 molecules or more than 7 molecules of nitrogen, and you have other molecules as well, like you can say nitrogen. So it means that the greatest quantity or the greater number of molecules are of nitrogen, and they have more impacts, they have more pressure in this mixture, while oxygen is second number, while other gases have other. So in respiratory physiology, one deals with mixture of gases like oxygen, nitrogen and carbon dioxide. The percentage, the respective percentages are written. The pressure that a particular gas in a mixture exerts independently is the partial pressure of that gas according to Dalton's law. So obviously that we have already discussed, that the number of molecules of a gas will determine its partial pressure, and the pressure that a particular gas in a mixture exerts independently is the partial pressure of that gas. The same, the one way and other thing, or the same thing. And the rate of diffusion of each of these gases is directly proportional to the pressure caused by that gas alone. So for example, oxygen is 21% almost, so its rate of diffusion will depend on its, so partial pressure of nitrogen in the mixture of air is 600 millimeter of mercury, and the partial pressure of oxygen is 160 millimeter of mercury. And the partial pressures of individual gases in a mixture are designated by the symbols. Like you have to remember that the P stands for partial pressure, and it is always capital, while the gas, although you are taught to represent it with a capital, but when you are writing the partial pressure, you have to write in a lowercase or small letter. So these are the composition and pressures of air in inspired and different airs and different anatomical sites. For example, inspired air that comes from environment, it has almost 78.68% nitrogen, while oxygen has oxygen is around 159, partial pressure of 159, while it spans around 20.84. Okay, while carbon dioxide is around 0.04%, and water is around 0.5 or 3.7 is the partial pressure of water. So total becomes 760 millimeter of mercury, while that is around 100%. So then humidified air, or the air that has more moisture in it, has around 74.09% of nitrogen. So humidified air, it means that the water will go up, humidification is there. While if you say obviously if one of the ingredient in a mixture goes up in a ratio, then other has to be decreased if you have to keep that similar. So if water goes up, it means nitrogen will drop down and oxygen will also drop down. Okay, while carbon dioxide relatively remains the same because it has to. Okay, then alveolar air, or the air that is present in alveoli. Once the air is in alveoli, the composition is almost the partial pressure of 569, while the percentage of nitrogen is around 79%, while oxygen has 104 millimeter of mercury, and the percentage of oxygen is 13.6, and similarly carbon dioxide is around 5.3% because carbon dioxide is diffusing out, so its quantity increases, while water, because humidification of alveolar air, this goes around 6.2%, while expired air has greater quantity of water and around greater quantity of carbon dioxide as compared to inspired air, while it has 15.7% of oxygen, the remaining oxygen, and that is 74.5%, almost it remains similar. So alveolar air is only partially replaced by atmospheric air with each breath. Oxygen is constantly being absorbed into the pulmonary blood from the alveolar air, so that is why its quantity goes down, while carbon dioxide is constantly diffusing from the pulmonary blood into the alveoli, from inside of the body to the outside. Then we have expired air, which is a combination of dead space air and alveolar air. Its overall composition is therefore determined by the amount of expired air, that is dead space air, and the amount that is alveolar air. Then we have respiration effect, respiration and effect of exercise on respiration. Obviously, when we start running, we start exercise, our respiration or the ventilation rate goes up. So the normal respiration rate in a resting individual is about 12 per minute, while tidal volume is about 50 ml. So during severe exercise, the respiratory rate may increase up to 50 per minute, while tidal volume goes up around 200 ml. So breathing becomes deeper and more rapid to produce a total minute volume that is many times the resting value. So mechanism of increased ventilation, we will see it in detail in last of this topic, but we can give a brief discussion that why this increased ventilation or increased respiratory rate is neurogenic mechanism. The first thing why ventilation rate increases, the first one is neurogenic. So rapid and immediate increase in ventilation whenever you start exercising. So number one, sensory nerve activity from the exercising limbs, or if you remember that proprioceptor from your cardiovascular unit, proprioceptor actually are the sensitivity receptors which actually locate your position, your posture. If you're standing, you're running, you are sitting, so whenever there is a shift in your posture, proprioceptor actually intimate the nervous system, and they initiate a sensory activity which ultimately comes back. So sensory nerve activity from the exercising limbs stimulate the respiratory muscles, either through spinal reflexes or via the brainstem respiratory center. So we have a respiratory center which actually controls the rate of breathing. That is located in brainstem in medulla oblongata pons, and input from the cerebral cortex may stimulate the brainstem centers to modify ventilation. Then second is how it happens. Neurogenic we will see in detail, or we will discuss in detail later on when we will be discussing the regulation of respiration. So then there is humoral mechanism. So this involves the chemical factors, this involves the blood, and this involves the chemical factors that mediate rapid and deep ventilation, which continues after exercise has stopped. So exercise causes secretion of adrenaline and noradrenaline in large amounts, which stimulate breathing. So another uncharacterized chemical called substance X is believed to be liberated from the exercising muscles, which stimulate peripheral chemoreceptor. So what is the overall effect of exercise? So increased pulmonary ventilation during exercise leads to much greater oxygenation of the venous blood in the lungs. The cardiac output may rise to 3 to 4 times the normal resting value or even more to provide blood or to maintain the demand of the exercising muscles. So there is no increase in partial pressure of carbon dioxide or decrease in partial pressure of oxygen in the arterial blood. So next we will discuss about the respiratory membrane and transport of oxygen and carbon dioxide in blood. So that is a very important topic in your exam point of view. So thank you very much.